Back when you were in high school or college, you ever see a girl across your classroom or walking by on the quad, and you say to your buddy,
Dude, did you see the bridge on that nose? I mean, if it is any indication. Holy garbanzo beans. There is a bridge I'd like to cross.
but then you actually go out with her and spend 2 hours looking directly at her face, and you can see that she's wearing a clean 2 inches of makeup? You try to ignore it, but eventually the time comes when you see her without makeup, and it's all over. You didn't necessarily get catfished, since it wasn't online. I don't know if there's a word for that phenomenon. If you know of one, let me know in the comments. I'm just going to refer to it as getting bullfrogged. Well, welcome to the movie equivalent of getting bullfrogged. If I were to just tell you a very high level overview of the movie, or you were to watch it during the commercials of a basketball game so you only caught certain scenes, you would think it's a really strong movie. Interesting premise, shining cast, relatable protagonist. But when you actually sit down and focus on it, you realize it's pretty vapid, giving you very little to enjoy beyond just the superficial concepts behind it. Charlie Heller is an encryption analyst for the CIA, and he's kind of exactly how you would expect an encryption analyst for the CIA to be. He's quiet, small in stature, a little awkward, and very, very timid. The film drives this home right off the bat. He has a plane in his barn that he's too scared to fly. He's never received any combat training, and it's his wife, Sarah, who is clearly the one trying to bring him out of his shell. She asks him to join her as she travels to London for work, as she also works for the CIA. Charlie, not one for taking any sort of risk, declines and has to hear from the higher-ups at the agency that his wife has been killed in a hostage situation gone awry. We get a glimpse of Charlie's skill set as he does his own investigation of what happened when his wife was shot, and he deduces who was involved in the botched job while he's supposed to be on bereavement. He presents his findings to Director Moore at the CIA and asks to be involved in taking the four people down. Moore declines the idea, but when Charlie reveals he knows about Moore's illegal running of false flag operations and threatens to expose him, Moore agrees to send Charlie to train with Lawrence Fishburne so that he can hunt down and kill the attackers himself. After training with Lawrence Fishburne for a week, Charlie sets off to Paris to start hunting down the four people involved in killing his wife, just as Director Moore decides it's time for Charlie to die, sending Lawrence Fishburne after him. So as Charlie tracks down his targets, the hunter becomes the hunted. The Amateur is an average Joe's take on Jason Bourne or James Bond. It takes a normal nerd and tries to make an effective CIA field agent out of him. Really, it's a fun premise. Makes you wonder, could you use your skill set to hunt down and kill people if they killed your wife? So let's talk about some of the positives of this movie. Rami Malek plays his part wonderfully. I'm pretty sure I've used him before as an example of someone who won an Oscar who really didn't deserve it. And I absolutely stand by that, but that isn't to say he's not a good actor. He's stepped into the roles he's played really well. I'd like to see him cast as a more assertive, dominant personality so I can see his range more than I think his filmography has showcased it, but regardless, for this movie, he's a great cast. You really empathize with him. A weak, timid man who is unbelievably out of his depth, but presses on and finds a way to make it work because of how much he loved his wife. And how he makes it work is pretty cool. Whether he's torturing someone in an allergy clinic or cracking a pool suspended between two buildings, he's simply outsmarting his opponents. Which is good, because you take one look at him and you know he has no chance of taking anyone on in an actual fight. Unfortunately, Hollywood only seems to be willing to acknowledge this obvious truth when the character in question is a small man, never a small woman. But let's cover some of the missteps. Charlie's ingenuity on how to find, trap, interrogate, and try to kill people is fun to watch, but the one time the film lets itself try its hand at an actual action sequence, it goes terribly. Charlie's being chased by a small army, and then all of a sudden, he's not. The writing just kind of saves Charlie's bacon, a couple times in fact. The biggest problem of the film, though, comes down to a combination of the pacing and Charlie himself. The movie starts off really strong, quickly getting us to care about Charlie's wife before she dies, getting us on Charlie's side, and then watching Charlie sift through the evidence to start his inquisition while uncovering Director Moore's sins. The first 20 minutes moves as though this movie is going to try and clock in under an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. But then it just slows to a snail's pace. It's like the pacing is backwards. Instead of starting slow and then ramping up to be a thriller, it starts fast and then spends most of the runtime kind of treading water. The big reason it feels this way is because in between the action sequences or the confrontations, it's just Charlie. He's a good character and he's easy to get behind, but he isn't the kind of character I want to watch for an extended period of time. He doesn't have the charisma of James Bond or the intensity of Jason Bourne. He's just an IT guy out of his depth. I kept waiting for the film to bring him and Lawrence Fishburne together and let them team up, but it doesn't happen. They really try to ride the character of Charlie through to the very end, and he runs out of steam about halfway through. There are other frustrations. The color grading of it is unnecessarily bleak, like a Zack Snyder film, but less distinct. John Bernthal is in it for no discernible reason. For all the impact his character had on the story, they could have just cast me, a bottle of hot sauce. They do introduce a new character in the latter half of the film for Charlie to bounce off of, but the new character is even less interesting than him. All in all, should you see The Amateur? Maybe when it's free on a streaming platform. Watch some cool instances of how a nerd uses his intellect to gain the upper hand over career criminals. But too much in between all of it is just worth skipping. But how about something else worth watching? Well, season 2 of The Last of Us has arrived. If you want to know what we're in for in the early goings of it, check out my deep dive into the intro of the game, or relive one of the greatest television scenes in recent memory from season 1.